It's Thank you, Jenny. It's so nice to see so many of you here today. I know we just had our company-wide meeting last week, and it was wonderful to see about 350 people that we had there. A lot of great sharing, a lot of great learning. So I'm excited to kind of take this to the next step here. And let me just kind of share before I introduce our fabulous panelists. I'd love to share with you why we're here and why we've chosen this topic today. We acquired a company, Advisors Living, about 6 months ago. Amazing group of people, truly, and everybody is really cranking on all cylinders. And there was one sticking point for a handful of folks that my suspicion is it is more prevalent. And that is the challenge of talking about the Sotheby's International Realty brand at the more foundational price points. And this is something that we have faced from time to time. I remember when we became a Sotheby's International Realty company 20 years ago, I remember having some of those kinds of questions then, and we've run into it in the time since. What we thought would be a great opportunity is nobody needs to hear from me. They need to hear from other agents who are facing the same kinds of challenges and have found some great language about how to talk about this. So we've invited three fabulous, generous folks to come on board and to chat with us about how they talk about the Sotheby's International Realty brand. So now I will introduce them, and I'm going to start with Sarah Heward, who is joining us from Mott and Chase Sotheby's International Realty from Providence, Rhode Island. Welcome, Sarah. And I was hoping you might tell us a couple of things. First of all, how long you've been in the business, and also how long you've been with the brand.
Sure. So I'm thrilled to be here and I'm grateful for the invitation. This is a topic I love talking about. I've been with Mott and Chase since I started. So I started real estate nine and a half years ago, and I've been with Mott and Chase ever since. And a big reason of why I aligned with Mott and Chase Sotheby's was because I would be able to offer luxury service and representation at every price point. My goal has always been to sell at every price point. So this is exactly why I aligned with them. So I'm eager to talk about it.
That's great. Thank you so much, Sarah. Next up is Kevin Frew. Kevin was the owner of Frew Realty, and we acquired that company 3 years ago this month.
Yep.
And congratulations. And so, Kevin, will you share with us how long you've been in the business and now how long you've been? Well, 3 years you've been with the brand, but tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about yourself.
So I've had a license for 24 years. I started on the development side with my brother flipping over houses in Newburyport. And I just happened, the first house I ever bought was next to the owner broker of Century 21, flipping over a house with his son. So he basically, over Bud Light said, "You got to get your license." And I was young. And I worked for Century 21 for a bunch of years. Then I went to Keller Williams for a bunch of years. Then I went and ran my own shop with my wife for realty for a bunch of years. And then I got acquired 3 years ago with Gibson or from Gibson. And I couldn't be happier. I mean, honestly, I align with Sotheby's and Gibson because it was what I wanted to build at my own mom and pop brokerage company, but I could never scale it the way they've done it. So that's the reason why it resonates with me, is because that's what I wanted to build. And then I didn't have to build it. I could just plug myself into the system.
Love that. I love that. And it has just been so much fun. We've had such a good time with you ever since. Thank you so much, Kevin. And now Tom Matthews. Tom and I have been working together for 15 years. And Tom has been so generous with his experience and his knowledge over the years, doing lots of teaching sessions, lots of networking sessions with folks. So Tom, tell us how long you've been in the business and then with the brand. I mean, obviously 15 years together,
Hmm.
right?
Thank you, Colleen. Thank you for having me today. So I've been selling real estate for about 25 years, been partnered with Joanne for 22 years. We started, as Colleen said, 15 years ago. And at that time, our average sales price was $350,000. We loved being with the brand because we wanted to sell luxury real estate, same amount of work, make more money. Our average sales price this past 12 months has been 1.2 million. But put on a condo last week for 375 and got
Mhm.
the question, my property is not $1 million property. Do you want to work with me? So we'll
Yeah.
talk about that and more. But and yes, we said yes. We put them on the market last week. And talk about how to handle that objection. The one thing I will say about the foundational prices is that you do make more money selling luxury real estate. So you just have to be comfortable with the fact that you may miss some lower end property and it has to
Mhm.
be okay with you. Because I remember about probably about 20 years ago, Joanne and I did 26 transactions for $7 million in volume. And 2 years ago, we did 26 transactions for 30 million, same transactions, 4x the money. So it was a wonderful year.
It's a great perspective, Tom. So I'm going to start right away with a question, and that is sort of naming the discomfort here, because the reality is, I think usually if someone is uncomfortable with us, it's because we're uncomfortable with the topic, right? So let's just dive right into that. Sarah, I'm going to start with you. Have you ever walked into an appointment feeling like you had to justify the brand? And what did that feel like, and what did you do?
I've always experienced where the brand precedes my entrance. It's the polish, it's the integrity, it's the prestige of the brand that precedes my ever entering the front door. So to me, it's always been a gift, and it's given me leverage over other agents because of that brand association that is inherent with the sign, with the name, with that Sotheby's blue. So no matter where I'm meeting a seller price wise and positioning wise, it's they know there's something special about what I'm going to be offering before I even go in. So that to me is a gift. And then I always send a pre-listing presentation. And in that presentation, it highlights some of the tenets of Sotheby's: incomparable expertise, the level of competition, the global media resources, all of that. So that, that's like the beginning act. And then when I go in, it's like I'm the Dave Matthews Band, but I've already had a great opener.
Yeah.
So to me, it's a gift, and that's when I met with Martin Chase, to know that I could have that prestige and credibility of a brand associated with then my agency. You're entering a competitive marketplace already with the ball in your court. So to me, it's never been something I've had to defend. It's
Right.
just something with great gratitude that I embrace. And it's my job to show the client how that benefits them, even at $200,000. Why is that relevant? And so we'll dive into that. But it's more of a grace that's given before
Mhm.
I'm even explaining my agency. So.
Yeah. That's interesting. Would you share one or two of the things that you talk about when it comes to that, like specifically? And I think of the FBI method that Lauren Muehlenthaler talks about. I think you've probably seen some of these teachings within the Sotheby's International Realty brand. There's the feature, the benefit, and the impact. Can you talk a little bit about the benefit and impact that you're leaning on? So let's say $200,000 condo, they call you in. What are a couple of the things, one or two things that you have within the brand that you kind of push forward and say, I understand that you might think that Sotheby's is about luxury properties, but,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, I lean heavy on what we provide. To me, luxury is a standard of representation.
yeah.
It's luxury is an experience, so it's how intentionally we position a property. It's how beautifully we position and present a property. And then it's how carefully we guide the client and how
Mhm.
strongly we advocate for the client. So I use that as something that's so advantageous to them as the seller. And I always highlight what the brand Sotheby's offers, and then how I support infusing that luxury experience. So in other words,
Yes.
I talk to them about our incomparable expertise. I
Mhm.
talk to them about competition and how exposing our exceptional properties at every price point and using our unparalleled marketing resources brings the seller the best price and ideally the best terms because competition drives value. That's important for a $200,000 sale. That's important for a 2 million. So if you go through each tenet, what are the beliefs that Sotheby's espouses? What do they enact? The global media plan. How is that relevant for a small town in Rhode Island? It's incredibly relevant because you're gaining access to not only some of the most exclusive brokerages in the world, but it's exposure. It's unparalleled and
Mhm.
exclusive exposure. And it doesn't matter what price you are. That's a given.
I
So
love that.
I have that same approach no matter, whatever door I'm entering, because that's the
Mhm.
beauty of our tried and true brand and luxury experience. They go hand in hand. And we've
I
got
love that.
incredible agents that fulfill that and make that a reality every day within our companies.
I love that. So, Kevin, let me kind of pivot over to you. Have you, I know that Tom has heard it. Have you ever had a seller say something like, geez, we aren't sure our home is expensive enough for Sotheby's, or we thought you only dealt with, $1 million plus homes? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to say it less eloquently than Sarah, but I mean, my approach is basically you're going to get the same exact thing that the $2, $3 million houses are, and I'm going to work on your behalf just as hard. I try to, when I get that inbound, like I look at that inbound, um, that interaction as they want to open up the conversation of what you're going to do differently or whatever it is, but you're really going to do the same thing. So you just have to reassure the person that you're no different than anybody else. You just have a massive corporation behind you pitching the listings. You're the same person and you're the boots on the ground. So I always try to like de-escalate it or dumb it down a little bit, so that people just feel comfortable. But yeah, I just got it the other day at a $700,000 condo that the buyer's father walked into, and he said, "Oh, Sotheby's, what are you doing here?" And I said, I'll work any listing, and do the same person. So I try to just get on the same level as who's asking me, because they're asking for a reason. That's what you need to understand. They're asking for a reason, and you need to have, a canned response, but it needs to be genuine.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because it reminds me what you're talking about now reminds me of what you said earlier, which is when you owned your own shop, you were trying so hard to be able to offer more to people, but scaling that is very difficult. And so you
Yes.
plugged into scale. So you now have the ability to do what you've always wanted to do, but to offer even more to these clients at every price point.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
That's awesome. So Tom, let me kind of shift it over to you a little bit, and you and I have been working all along as you were doing, primarily the foundational properties, and you've gained the ability and scale into the higher price properties. But shifting back to when you were solely focused maybe at those entry level price points, when you're talking to someone whose home represents the bulk of their personal wealth, you could argue that somebody actually needs that exceptional service more. I mean, talk to me about how you see that perspective.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, and one of the things I want to say to everyone is that we sell houses, but we work with people. And like,
Mhm.
if you look at the NAR stats, probably 70% of your referrals come from someone in your SOI. So I
Yeah.
always say to people, you came to me as a referral from someone I love who trusts, knows me, loves me, and trusts me. And I work with the people. Then we sell the product. And what I try to tell them is that by working at Sotheby's, and then the other thing they assume is that Sotheby's is more expensive. So I oftentimes tell them that we're not more expensive. And what we do is we have the resources and the team to make your property the best in its class. So talk to people, tell them you're going to make it the best $200,000 property and make it stand out because you have the resources at your disposal. And I tell them again, it's about the people. I will walk away from a $3 million listing if I don't like the seller, but I will take the $500,000 listing if I like the people. So you really have to shift your focus when working at Sotheby's that it's about the people and about the relationships and focus on that first. Get the cost out of the way, let them know we're not more expensive, and then really dial down to the fact that when you work with the average American family, the equity, so the difference between what their house sells for and what they owe the bank, that equity position is typically a top five asset in their financial portfolio. And your job as their advocate is to protect that, enhance it, and help them make their life better. If you talk to people in that fashion, they will resonate with you and it really stands out. And then you can defer, because a woman who said to me, I put her condo on the market last week. She's like, I went to your website, I clicked through Sotheby's, you sell luxury, gorgeous homes. Why would you work with me? I said, well, you were referred to me by a past client, so why wouldn't I work with you? I met with them, I advised them on cleaning the house up a little bit. They liked that advice. We put it on the market. Now I have two people swirling. But again, it's not about the product, it's about the people. And too often time we get caught up because it's very easy at Sotheby's to get caught up in the Lamborghinis, the Ferraris, the $15 million sales. But the company's average price point is 1.2 million, which means we sell a lot of $500,000 properties and a lot of $3 million properties. And, I would really just tell people, particularly if you're new to the brand, focus on the people first. And then what you can do is you can lean into the company. The infrastructure of Gibson Sotheby's is phenomenal. We have a 10-person marketing team, maybe more, maybe less, that can support your sellers in giving them the best positioning in their price point to stand out. You bring them expertise in how to position. If anyone's read Jack Trout's book, Positioning, you have seconds to stand out in a crowded field. The first quarter, we haven't been a crowded field, but in my town, we had 15 listings come on the market last week. The field may get a little bit more crowded in the weeks to come. And it's all about how to stand out and how to make the people feel special.
I love that. I think that's huge. And kind of to your point, I think what you lean forward with in your marketing is going to also tell a story. And Sarah, I think you do that particularly well, that while there's an eye candy to the property, the super high priced properties, part of what you're leaning into is your story and your approach as a person to person kind of, customer service forward
Yeah,
approach. Can you talk a little bit about that,
sure.
how you use the brand in your marketing?
Sure. I'm I'm very much service oriented. It's just from my background and I'm fueled daily by gratitude. So with that comes embracing all price points, and my efforts are no different from a lower price point home to a higher price point home. And the benefit that I'm able to bring to my clients is they know there's a leverage, there's a an elevated perception of value that comes with a Sotheby's listing. It's, they call those brand signifiers where, and Sotheby's is one where you see the sign and it literally signifies a feeling and emotion. And for most, it's value. And what I love to tell my sellers is that when that sign goes up, people know there's something special. There's something special there. It's a direct response to our brand. So to have that in our back pocket as we go in and speak to the sellers about our unique approach, to have that backing of Sotheby's where there you have that distinction associated with every home. It's a beautiful thing. And then I then, speak further about my unique approach, which, as you mentioned, Colleen, is very much service oriented. But again, as a luxury experience, our reputation throughout all our offices and through with every agent is one where we exude, great care, strategy, presentation, advocacy. That's a Sotheby's standard. And I feel as though we all espouse to exceed expectations. And I do that every day. And if you live with that mindset and you have the gifts of unparalleled and exclusive exposure and what that means on the selling side as far as your results, it's a winning combination.
Yeah.
um, so yeah, I definitely lean in to the service part, because if you ask sellers after a sale if there was anything negative, what was it? I think it's 76% of sellers are going to say it's communication. So if
Hmm.
you're not communicating with your sellers, you are failing them. And that's part of a service mindset. Every day you're checking in. If you get to a closing table and there's an, oh, I didn't know that, then you've failed as an agent. So that
Yeah.
weighs heavy on me every day. But again, I think we all think we that's why I love working with this brand, is we all embrace that mindset of being proactive communicators. And we're blessed with beautiful marketing
Yeah.
and beautiful photography. And then it's how artful we can tell the story of the home. It's, I feel like I'm winning all the time because of the support I have behind me. And then
I
it's
love that.
I feel very, very fortunate.
So, part of what you said there is so interesting. It reminds me of the book, Unreasonable Hospitality. So, if somebody hasn't read that, and let's say you're not a reader, go and find one of the interviews with the writer who was a restaurateur. And he tells stories in there about the luxury experience being different things. Like Sarah's talking about luxury is communication. Great communication is a luxury. Let's face it,
Yes.
like anybody who's ever called a customer service line and been stuck in one of those perpetual, hey, listen, we're going to get to you in the next 4 hours kinds of things, that's not a luxury experience, but being communicated well and often in the methods that you choose, that is luxury, kind of like in Unreasonable Hospitality, a couple who said, geez, we came to New York. We were really hoping we get to have a hot dog from a street vendor and we never got one. And the fact that the staff at that luxury restaurant went and got them a hot dog from a street vendor so that they could have that experience. It's
Yeah.
not about the dollar. It's about the thing that somebody desires. So I love that. And I think, the other thing you said in there, and I'm going to pivot to you, Kevin, is brand signifiers. I remember years ago being on the other side of a two-way mirror as Sotheby's was conducting a consumer research panel, and they talked to emerging wealth. So these are people who had just bought or sold $1 million plus property for the first time in their lives, and then people who were established wealth. So they had been in that echelon for a while. And what they all said to a T was, when I see a Sotheby's brand placard, when I see that sign, I think there must be something special about that property. So, Kevin, can you talk about that? That the shift from Fru Realty, which is a great brand, but one that you had to build soup to nuts. What is the difference when someone sees the Sotheby's sign on their property?
Yeah, I mean, it's a whole different thing. I mean, the Sotheby's sign definitely adds a ton of value in, the listing presentation, because people haven't, you could say zero and people have an ex, you know, expectation of what that sign means. And, I love that people are explaining it, but I will go against the grain. I don't typically explain a lot of it. I mean, you want to have great service, and the luxury is the service that you provide and the experience that you provide the person. But
Mhm.
the difference between Fru Realty and Gibson Sotheby's is totally night and day. It is what I wanted to build, and it's the top tier of everything. Like you're saying, like the top tier of the pictures and the marketing and the staff, and everybody's paddling in the same direction. That has helped me tremendously through the last 3 years to sort of gain market share and raise my price point. I know we're not talking about raising the price point, but I still sell houses that are $400,000 or $200,000. Like, I'm not going to turn anybody away. I'm not going to discriminate on price, because it's what Tom said. I just want to work with good people. And I'll just leave you guys that you need to lean into the staff. So at every single brokerage that I've worked at, not owned, you basically are sort of left on your own devices. Like Century 21, you're sort of left there to do whatever you need to do. Keller Williams, you're definitely like, that's their model, to leave you there and like try to let you sort of, swim with the sharks. But here, your job is to go and get that like relationship going with a client, and then come back to the brokerage house and show them what you have, and they will help you produce what you need to have to sell that house. So your job
Yeah.
isn't everything anymore. It's really just to service that client, because I've learned over 24 years, if you service that client the exact way Sarah is saying to do it, which I don't do every single time, your business will just grow organically.
That's right, because it's so interesting. I remember hearing years ago, if you if you treat somebody like what we're talking about, in other words, you bring that sort of Ritz-Carlton highest level of service, and they're going to tell their friends about it, right?
Oh,
That the
100%.
stress came off of that, and that becomes
And
your marketing.
yeah, I work in a very small town. So, and it's very, I don't know, I'm sure it's competitive everywhere. Everybody's working, but I feel like it's competitive, and it's not everybody's not going to work with you all at once. It's a slow, methodical, one good experience with a client at a time. If you can have three great experiences with a client a day, you'll be a superstar in 2 years.
Right. I love that. So, Tom, if you can kind of build on that, I saw your head nodding, and I know that you had this experience with Joanne, that when you became part of our team, we took a lot of the marketing stresses and other things like that off of you, which meant you could totally focus on clients. Can you talk a little bit about the structure, the company support structure that you lean into when it comes to marketing? And I know that you've built new marketing pieces, including your YouTube channel and Google marketing off of your conversations with Jenny. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and kind of staying relevant to the question of like how to secure the $400,000 listing, because I really think that's the topic that people want to know about.
Yeah.
One of the things I used to coach with Colleen before she was the CEO of the company, and so one of her phrases is getting the donuts out the door. And to Kevin's point, one of the things you can say when you're on that $400,000 listing and you're against the Keller Williams agent and the Caldwell Banker agent is that we have an in-house marketing team. You have direct access to them. And the biggest complaint that most sellers have is that they hired the professional who didn't produce the results. So, like, you can say to them that you have a staff that is dedicated to selling homes, and you're going to get out the door what you promise. The other thing I always say to people, and I'm very candid with folks when I meet with them and I'm talking about their $400,000 house, I tell them what the difference is between what I can give them and what I give the $4 million house is going to be certain placement. They may not get the New York Times, but they're going to get the social media. They're going to get the really nice brochures. They're going to get the photography because people want to know, like, what is the difference? So the difference oftentimes with the luxury homes is the placement because their $400,000 home doesn't need to go in the Rob report, whereas the $4 million home does. And the people understand that. But I tell them what they are going to get is they're going to get high quality photography. They're going to get high quality brochures. They're going to get high quality social media that the other companies, because of what Kevin said, like Keller Williams agents, they're on Canva trying to do this themselves. And to make a living at the $400,000 price point, you have to sell 50, 60, 70 homes a year. So when you work at Sotheby's and you're in the luxury and you're trying to make a living, if you get your price point higher, you don't have to do as many units. So that when you do help out someone in the lower price point, you can give them a little bit better service. The other thing I talk to people about when they're referred to me and they have a $400,000 home, I say to them is that at Sotheby's, we are a selective brokerage. You can't fog a mirror and work here. The average realtor last year sold 0 properties. And I talked to them about how at Sotheby's, there's an expectation that we sell homes and we get results, and that we're going to take care of their property and make sure we get them to the closing table. I spent a lot of time selling. I built my business back in '08 on expired listings. And Larry Rideout got mad at me because I went on like 200 listing appointments at $1 million and got like 200 no's. And he's like, bring in some experienced agents. You'll get the listing. And I was like, no, I want to do it myself.
Yeah.
And ironically, I just went on a $3 million listing appointment. And it's just like, it just takes time. And she was like giving me a lot of grief because my highest sale is 2.7 million. So I've sold almost 800 properties. My highest sale is 2.7. Most of my sales are in that $5 to $1 million range. And yes, there's the objection, but if you focus on the people and focus on getting the donuts out the door, you will just crush it in your marketplace because this
I love
fund
that.
is here to support the agents.
I love that. So there were a couple of things I heard there. One was the really leaning on the marketing department, and that another companies that tend to be focused on those lower price points, the foundational price points, they're not getting that kind of support. So that allows you to provide exceptional service and really focus on them. But there was another element there of being able to collaborate with your colleagues, and not only the support staff here, but also the colleagues that you are working with who are also selling. And so I'd like to kind of focus now on that. Sarah, what does collaboration look like to you? I know, as by way of example, you've got colleagues from all over the country who have joined this call because you collaborate with them on a regular basis. But what does it look like in your market, and how do you leverage that network?
Yes, I apologize for my lab who's collaborating with whoever's at the door. But I I'm a team player and I feel like we're all of like a varsity team mindset and we all strive to work at a very high level. So asking questions with agents in within my office and within all our offices, asking questions to Boston agents. I do it all the time. And leaning into someone else's expertise because it might be an area that you don't have experience in. That's I feel like there's a humility with Sotheby's agents where there's not a lot of ego. I haven't experienced it. And if I have a question about something, I'm going to ask another agent because again, I can't serve the needs of my clients if I'm not an expert in that area. And I'm the first to ask questions. I mean, my attorney, I have him on speed dial. Any question I have that I'm uncertain about, I'm going to check with him first so that I'm educating my clients properly. But I love being a team player, and every day I'm communicating with other agents. Hey, have you done a 1031 lately? What's the deal with, it's because it's always something. And I sell all over the state, and there are different nuances in different parts of the state. What's the deal with who's the best septic inspector? All of those things. But if we don't drill down on getting that information, then how are we providing a luxury
Yeah.
experience via our highly elite sense of representation if we're not doing that? So that's why I love the Sotheby's family, and you feel it when you go to global networking events.
Yeah.
It's this constant back and forth. Like, can you educate me a little bit about this because I don't understand that. And again, there's no sense of, well, I should know it.
Right.
Absolutely not. I'm learning every day of the week, and that's why I love it.
That's right.
But we have such a robust network to tap into. So yes, so I totally lean into the collaboration. And luckily, Rosie has stopped collaborating with the postal guy.
With the
Apologize
postal
about
guy at the
that.
door. No, not at all. As a matter of fact, I think your Zoom was doing a good job of killing that extra
Oh,
noise. So,
good. Okay.
yeah. So it's interesting from a collaboration standpoint. I think of this call as being a great example of the kind of collaboration that we're used to within the Sotheby's International Realty Network. That when you hear from a few people that they're struggling with something, it's like, let's get people from not only within our company, but also within the network outside of our company, people who have faced this kind of thing before, where you can learn from each other and start to develop a relationship. And the collaboration is so key. And I think, especially at the foundational price points, I would say that we built our last company-wide meeting that happened last week on the workshop format because it's the collaboration that makes the difference. It's the collaboration that pushes it forward. It's hearing how other people are thinking about things. And again, trying to find that language that maybe unlocks an obstacle for you. It kind of like allows you to kind of blow past it or get over it. So I think that's huge. So I would love to kind of to fire into another piece here. Um, and uh, and that is like when you're explaining value to somebody who is at that more foundational price point, Kevin, and you're talking about the Sotheby's International Realty brand. I know you've leaned into the network and you've gone to events and stuff. Are there things from those events that you bring back and you talk
Yeah.
about at the kitchen table with people?
Yeah, just to go back to one point, it's like I never did a pre-market, like a pre-listing appointment package. And then I went on to one of the G&E events and some woman was basically giving out her package
Yeah.
at the event. And I emailed her and she PDF'd me everything. I didn't have to do anything. I went to the marketing team and said, "Hey, I'm thinking about reimagining it this way." And then now I've got a pre-listing package that I could drop off to somebody, which I haven't had in 20 years. And it was a very light lift. So just understand there's not just people out there to collaborate with, but the company is there to help you. They have staff to help you. Um, Colleen, I already forgot the question.
That's okay. No, we're just talking about it. There are things that when you go to those events, things you come back and bring to the kitchen table with you. And that's one great example. Are there others?
Yeah, there's definitely others. I mean, the events are great. I like the small G&E. I think they're just called G&E events,
Or
not the
regional events? Yeah.
yeah, the regional events, because then you can really kind of have real conversations or more genuine
Mhm.
conversations with the players that are inside those regions. Like I went down to Greenville and did that one and came back with,
Yeah.
there I was sitting and having dinner with a guy that did like lake property, and I'm doing trying to do like waterfront property. I mean, it's a great collaboration in that sense. And then when you get down to the foundational prices, you can use all the same things. Like I don't I wouldn't get caught up on the foundational pricing versus the $15 million. These are all just people that want genuine help. Like that's how I look at it.
Hmm.
Yes, there are differences that Tom came up with that are like, you're going to be in the Wall Street Journal at 15 million and you're not going to be at 500,000. But yeah, I mean, it's just about being genuine to the people that you connect with, that you want to work with. And I agree with Tom. There has been people that are high net worth individuals that I was oil and water with. And
Yeah.
I had a much better time selling the $400,000 condo down the street instead
Yeah.
of wasting any energy worrying about why it didn't work out with the guy that I didn't, not because of the price point, just because you're just not going to jive with everybody. And, it just comes back to being genuine to each person in any price point.
I love that. I like leaning into that piece of it. Tom, can you kind of speak a little bit more to that? The when I think about, you brought up the Robb report, and, talking about the Wall Street Journal. Um, I think of the reason that those are at the higher price point is because we're curating the audience and the property, right? So we're trying to find the right audience for each individual property to make sure that we're getting the most for it. Can you talk a little bit about how, like, if someone says to you, well, does that mean that my
Yeah.
$500,000 home is going to be in the Wall Street Journal? How would you answer that kind of question?
No, it's a great question. And Kevin said he started the business flipping houses.
Yeah,
I've started in sales and never deviated from sales. And I don't
yeah,
go to any G&Es because I have three kids under 11.
yeah.
So all I do is focus on how to sharpen my sales skills. And so, one of the things, a lot of people don't like scripts, but I think scripts are great. I think you should make them your own. But one of the great scripts I like talking to people about when I'm talking about price and value is that you can buy a diamond bracelet at Costco
Yeah.
for a fraction of the price of which you can buy the same exact diamond bracelet at Tiffany's. And people buy the Tiffany's bracelet all the time. and they spend more money on it. And I often use this little story about when I need to defend my commission because when people are concerned about price, and I talk to them, it's about value.
Yeah.
It's about that perception of value. So like
Hmm.
when because one of the things you may get into when you're at that $400,000 property is you may have someone who might want to push you on your commission a little bit. And so you have to defend value. And one of the things is that people drive BMWs where they could be driving a Toyota Corolla. So
Hmm.
when people are looking to buy homes, one of the things I talk about is like they will spend a little bit more to own that home that's marketed by Sotheby's. That's
Yeah.
another value add that you bring to the table is that you're bringing them this value because we live in a society primarily, even at 500,000, where people have a little bit more money than they need. So they are oftentimes spending money on wants. Now, to answer your question, how to defend if someone says, why won't my house be in the Rob report? What I will simply say to them is that typically people that are looking at the Rob report own between 5 and 10 homes. And I'll just say, Mr. Homeowner, do you own 5 or 10 homes? And they'll say no. And I say, so you will not be looking at this magazine, nor will your buyer be looking at this magazine. So it would be inappropriate for me to position your home in a magazine where your target audience isn't looking. You
Yeah.
know, Oftentimes people that buy luxury homes, it's not
Hmm.
their only property. They oftentimes aren't looking to buy, and we have to position their homes in collateral material where they're looking for a luxury BMW or a luxury Bentley, see your house and decide to buy it on a whim. That is just that marketplace. And so I say to them, we're going to position your home in the marketplace because the first 6 photos that go in the MLS are syndicated automatically to over 100 websites. I say we're going to talk about how those first 6 photos are going to be really important. We're going to talk about how we're going to position their property in Zillow, Redfin, homes.com, where their target audience is looking, and how
Hmm.
we're going to help make their property, again, the best in its class. So the best
Yeah.
$400,000 property out there so that it stands out, gets the most eyeballs, gets the most people through the front door. We work in a competitive marketplace. So what I say to people is that we're going to come on, we're going to photograph your house, stage it, do it a week ahead of time. We're going to list on a Wednesday. We're going to have broker tour Thursday. We're going to have open house Saturday, Sunday, and hopefully have multiple bids on Tuesday. I'm going to talk
Hmm.
about how we have the systems in place to make their property the best in its class. And then I'm going to talk about how at Sotheby's, because we have transactional experience, how we're going to negotiate them a bulletproof transaction to ensure they get to a closing table.
I love it because what I'm hearing too is this sort of builds off of Sarah's communication is luxury, right? It's like planning is luxury, intentionally selecting the right audience is luxury. Like all of these things are really catered to the individual homeowner in their individual property that they're trying to sell. So I think that's a huge piece. So if I can pivot just a little bit, I'm going to move into the direction of you know, kind of reflecting on what we've heard today before we open it up to questions, just in case people have them. Sarah, what's like one phrase you've heard today or something that you thought that you might be able to use as at your next appointment? Is there anything that you've heard from these guys that you thought was interesting?
Oh, absolutely. I think Tom and Kevin both spoke to how it's 100% relationship based. To
Mhm.
me, it's never been about price. It never will be about price. It's how we treat our clients with dialed in care, advocacy, support, fluid communication, and that begins the day they first reach out to you. When someone reached out to me when I was on a walk, by the time I was home, 2 hours later, I had a CMA to them. I had a note in the mail. That's because someone was given my name, and I that's responding to a need and being consistent. With consistency creates massive results. So if you're consistent with your habits, you're consistent with the service you provide, it's going to be a tried and true resource for people. Just like Colleen, you mentioned the Ritz-Carlton. When you go to the Ritz, you're going to get a wonderful a quality experience. So if we as agents can create that through a very dialed in, intensely lofty dedication to really exceeding expectations on our service. And we have the benefit and the unparalleled exposure and brand integrity of Sotheby's behind us.
Yeah.
It's a winning combination. So Tom and Kevin both reference that beautifully, and how they approach each sale with the person first and foremost. The price is irrelevant. It's
Yeah.
how are you going to treat and support and champion that person. So huge takeaways for me on that.
And I love the handwritten note. Talk
Yeah.
about, I think one of the things that is so exciting about this brand, one of my earliest experiences was, I had the same kinds of thoughts about the brand initially. And then my first Sotheby's event that I went to, Mike Good, who at the time was the president and CEO of the brand, came up to me and said, Colleen, how's Boston? And being recognized and seen and having that personal connection to me was just extraordinary. And I think doubling down with the handwritten note is that like you're seeing them, you're showing them that you value them, that you're willing, you've got a personal connection. You don't write notes to people you don't know very well typically. So I think that's great. Kevin, if you had, let's say you get a call, you had 30 seconds to be able to tell a new client, so someone who you've not had a connection with before, and they're, at that $400,000 price point, tell them why they would deserve Sotheby's International Realty, what would you tell them in that 30-second time frame?
I would say that every house deserves exceptional marketing, no matter what the price point is. And I would try to lean into the fact that it's not about the price point, it's about the service that I'm going to provide them.
I love that.
It's, I
I
mean,
love
it's
that.
not, and I don't know if I'm going to waste everybody's time on here, but it just dawned on me that I went through this experience when I was selling my business to Sotheby's, because I remember
Mhm.
thinking to myself, the person I'm going to meet for the first time that represents Sotheby's was going to be in a three-piece suit with a monocle and like a little cane. And then Larry walked through the door, and I was like, oh, I get it. It's
Yeah.
not about the price or how big my company was or what I was doing. It was about he was going to look at me as a genuine person and
Mhm.
basically treat me
Yeah.
no differently than he would treat the guy that has, a $15 million business to sell him. So I went through that same experience. It just dawned on me that I had that feeling of the Sotheby's guy is going to be too richy rich for me. Um, and it's just not a reality. It's about bringing it down to what the person's needs are and solving that and creating a great outcome for that person that you're working for.
I love that.
Sorry.
And I think, no, that is amazing because I think what makes Larry special is the fact that he is down to earth and that he's present with you. Anybody who knows Larry knows that he is completely down to earth. He's a very accessible guy. I mean, he's accessible to any of our folks. They can call him at any moment.
And I will
And
say, like,
yeah,
when I was having that experience, within seconds, he disarmed it. And that's what
yes.
you need to do.
Mm.
Yep, just to be present with them. I absolutely love that. Tom, take us home with, one final thought that you've got about this, like something that everybody on this call should be thinking about what in that kind of circumstance.
I mean, I would say lean on your own personal experience.
Yeah.
As I said, we're an invite-only company. So the fact that you're working here means that you've proven yourself in the marketplace. So when you're talking to that consumer, you're telling them they're getting the best of both worlds. They're getting your personal experience represented by one of the best brands in Massachusetts.
I love that. That's fabulous. Now, first of all, I want to thank all three of you for sharing these amazing nuggets of wisdom because there have been a number of gems here that I know that I've taken away. But I wanted to now open it up to anybody who's got a question or a challenge that they've faced in a similar environment, and let's put these brains to work for you and their experiences. So, does anybody have any questions or thoughts? You can raise a virtual hand, a real hand, just start speaking or type it into the chat, whatever you're most comfortable with. I don't know, you guys seem to cover it so well. There may not be anymore. I mean, these people now are going, this is no longer a challenge for me. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time today. I'm so grateful for everybody who was on this call, and I'm particularly grateful to the three of you for sharing your experiences and your wisdom with us. So thank you very much.
Oh, such an
And
honor to be a part. I love this.
yay, I love
Thank
it.
you.
Good. Thank you guys very much, and I hope you have a fabulous rest of the week.
Yeah,
Thank
you
you,
See
Colleen.
those
Take
spring
too.
care.
flowers continue to come.
Let's do
Bye.
it.
Yeah.